Welcome back to Indiana at the voice of college football, and we've got our post-game live reaction to the Indiana Northwestern game. And it's been a wild weekend of college football. There's been a lot of upsets that people were not expecting, including Vanderbilt knocking off the Alabama Crimson Tide, which is insane. No one would have ever expected that to happen. Vanderbilt hasn't beaten Alabama since 1984. So that's insane, and that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about on Thursday night with Jackson on the Alabama channel at the Voice of College Football for our first ever edition of the live call-in show. So definitely, you got to go check that out if you want to vent and rage about Alabama football. And we just saw Minnesota knock off USC. There's a lot of upsets going on. Washington beat Michigan, but one team that did not get upset as a heavy favorite, and they're normally not a heavy favorite, but things are different now in Bloomington, is the Indiana Hoosiers. They went out there and they knocked off the Northwestern Wildcats 41-24. They won by 17. They were favored to win by 14, and they covered, which they basically have been doing all season long. They got a 17-point win, and the Indiana Hoosiers are 6-0, which is absolutely unreal. They were the first team this season to become bowl eligible. Indiana rarely ever makes bowl games, and they rarely are ever 6-0. This is only the second time in their school history that they have been 6-0, and the first time was back in 1967. This is an historic time for Indiana football. Curt Cignetti is doing a fantastic job with the Indiana Hoosiers. And I see a lot of people that are detractors right now online about Indiana football saying, well, they haven't beaten anybody. They haven't really beaten anybody that's going to probably make a bowl game or anybody with a winning record. I understand all those sentiments. I get that. But the thing is, this is Indiana football, and you cannot tell me that with Tom Allen as head coach right now, and with the team that they had last year, that Indiana football is 6-0 right now. They're probably 3-3, possibly 2-4, which is more likely than not. But Indiana is 6-0, and they just got a big win over the Northwestern Wildcats. They already have wins in the Big Ten over UCLA on the road. They beat Maryland at home, and they went to Northwestern and got a big win over the Wildcats. And what's even crazier about this result for Indiana is the fact that when you look how they've not won at Northwestern since 1993 as well. So Indiana's just breaking records left and right. They haven't won in Evanston in 31 years. Northwestern's not a fantastic team. They're not a fantastic program, but they have had some feisty teams. Pat Fitzgerald did a really good job there for many years, but still Indiana has not won there since 93. They don't play at Northwestern that often, but still that's definitely embarrassing. That was at the end of the Bill Mallory era. So that's crazy for IU. Finally ended that streak. They're 6-0, just everything going great for Indiana football, and you gotta love it for Hoosier fans. Kind of like Vanderbilt getting a win over Alabama. Some of these teams that just don't have a lot of success, you gotta love it when they do eventually have a little bit of success. But the thing with Indiana is it just feels legit, right? You're talking about a team that is 6-0, 3-0 in the Big Ten. Even though they haven't played anybody, they're blowing everybody out relatively enough. I mean, granted, this game right here, I will say, Indiana did have some adversity. A little bit of adversity in this game. There was a 4th and 1 that Indiana went for in the first half when the game was tied 7-all, and Indiana did end up completing that pass for a touchdown. Great catch by Miles Cross, Curtis Rourke's teammate at Ohio, and now he's at both are at Indiana. That was a really good catch by Miles Cross. And then you also talk about the fact that Northwestern has not really been that great of an offensive team this year, right? So Northwestern, a team that was not really good offensively coming into this game, had a good game on offense for them anyway, scoring 24 points. They only scored 5 points against Washington, and they put up 24 against Indiana. So you can kind of look at Indiana's defense a little bit and say, is Indiana's defense up to snuff? Because they did give up 28 to Maryland. Now they just gave up 24 to Northwestern. But throughout the game, just like against Maryland, every single time that Northwestern scored and they punched Indiana in the mouth, Indiana responded. Indiana found a way to score again. And that's what's been the biggest key to me about watching Indiana football this year. because of the fact that they just don't let adversity get to them. They just don't let when the other team punches them in the mouth and finds a way to score. They just don't let that affect them. They continue to play at a high level. And that's what I really like seeing from Indiana football. I just like the effort, the tenacity, and they never stop playing hard. They never back down at all whatsoever at any point in the game so far. Now, obviously, later on in the season, and we're going to be talking about plenty of this stuff later on in the year, on Tuesday nights at 7 Eastern time for Indiana Hoosiers Live, every single Tuesday on this channel. We are going to be doing Indiana Hoosiers Live, talking about the team that they just played, kind of like we're doing now, but we're going to be doing that for, again on Tuesday night for the team that just played, so Indiana Northwestern. We're also going to be talking about the next week's game. Now, obviously, Indiana doesn't have a game next week. That's great. They got a bye coming up before they have to play Nebraska, so Indiana can rest and look back on what they've done and showcase all the improvement that they've made and the effort they've showed, and be able to say, hey, we still got a lot of things we got to get better at. And that's the thing that you got to love about Curt Cignetti. If this was Tom Allen right now, if Indiana was 6-0, he'd be running all over the place. He'd be saying, well, this is incredible, proud of the guys, LEO, and you got to love all that stuff about Tom Allen. But the thing is that Curt Cignetti doesn't really show a whole lot of emotion. He's saying that they should be here, right? Like this should not be, a surprise, that this was expected. That's what I love, the attitude with Curt Cignetti, like just not giving 2 cents what anybody in the media is saying about the team, hyping them up. The rankings don't matter. Like Indiana gets ranked. How many times have you seen a team that isn't normally ranked become ranked and then they fold? They fall apart. That happens all the time because those players see we're ranked now. People believe in us, and then it gets in their head, and then they lose. That's not happening with Indiana. And you can say Northwestern isn't the best team in the world. That is absolutely true. But Indiana took care of business. And the stats are very impressive in helping them win this game 41-24. Curtis Rourke, he might not be on your bingo card for Heisman candidate, but he's definitely in the conversation. In 6 games, Rourke has thrown 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And look at his completion percentage in this game. 25 of 33 for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the funny thing enough about this game is that Northwestern supposedly had a good defense, right? This was the best defense statistically that Indiana has played in the Northwestern Wildcats. So that's insane to me. I just think it's wild that Northwestern supposedly has like a top 30 defense statistically, and Indiana just ran all over on the ground and through the air. So I feel like, to me, when you're looking at that fact alone, Indiana's offense is legit. There have been a couple times where they've had a little bit of struggles, but their offense is legit. I'm still slightly worried about that defense coming up with some bigger games, but they took care of business in the second half. Once they started figuring out Northwestern, they started figuring out their passing attack, their run game. They started shutting them down more as the game went along. But we got some people in chat, and I really appreciate you guys stopping by for the Indiana Northwestern post-game live. Jack's saying, what's up, Hoosier Nation? I appreciate that, Jax. We got Will and D saying, hey, Jeffrey. Steven Cherry says, my God, Jeffrey, congrats on the win. Appreciate that, Steven. And you all say just left the Michigan chat. Over at Michigan at the voice of college football. Sad scene over there. Yeah, I hate it for Michigan fans, man. That's a tough loss to Washington, just like USC to Minnesota. A lot of teams. Alabama. Me and Jackson, again, Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time on Alabama at the voice of college football. That's going to be a fun time right there. A lot of angry Bama fans. It's going to be a fun time talking about it, but I'm definitely sad by the fact Bama lost. That's a tough loss. But Indiana didn't do that. All these teams lost today. Tennessee struggling with Arkansas right now. They're in a lot of hot water, but Indiana took care of business. Didn't let all this get to them. Didn't let the fact that with this win they could become bowl eligible. Didn't let the fact that their rank get to them. Didn't let none of these factors get to them. And Jackson says the fact that Indiana is the first bowl-eligible team of the 2024 season is humongous. I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of Indiana football. Probably not. I don't think there's ever been a time in their history where they were the first bowl-eligible team. It would have had to have been that 1967 season when they started the year 6-0. But maybe another team got bowl-eligible first. This is historic for Indiana on so many levels. They're 6-0, and they're dominating everybody that they play relatively enough. And I just really love it. I love seeing it because this is a complete team, and it's a complete team effort. Because you talk about, like I've said before on previous Indiana Hoosiers lives, talking about the Kevin Wilson era, it was all about the pass. It was all about the passing game on offense. And Indiana had no defense back then. They had a couple good running backs, but it was mostly passing for Indiana. Then with Tom Allen, it was more of a run game until Penix. And the defense was better than it was under the Kevin Wilson era until things fell apart those last couple of years. This Indiana team is balanced on both parts of their offense and both sides of the ball. Rourke threw for 380, but look at the ground game, 149 yards. And I know that for a lot of teams, you can say, well, that's not fantastic. But there were a lot of games that Indiana had in the Tom Allen era where they couldn't even run for 75 yards. They couldn't even run for 80 yards, 50 yards, whatever it may be. They struggled on the ground. And they got a lot of running backs here. Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton, Kalen Black, who can all get yards. And they're all effective in their own way. Kalen Black, Justice Ellison are a bit quicker. Tyson Lawton, though, he's that power back, and he can really smash mouth you. And he actually has some speed, too. So I really like the ground game for Indiana football. And that's a big reason why they're such a good offense, because at not one point in the game, not one point or any moment, can you say, well, Indiana, they're lighting it up through the air. We got to stop, the air raid attack they got going on us. Well, if you do that, they're going to run the football on you. And then if you say, well, we're going to stop the run game, we're not going to let them run the football at all, make Curtis Rourke beat you. Well, Curtis Rourke's going to beat you. Okay, so that's the thing. This is a balanced offense from Indiana. And why is the passing game so dynamic? Look at these receivers. Elijah Surratt, he's definitely wide receiver number one. Absolutely. And the fact that Donovan McCulley, who was the leading receiver for Indiana last year, is gone. He's not even on the team anymore. He just entered the transfer portal. A lot of people are like, that's bad. That's horrible news for Indiana, right? That Donovan McCulley left. And it sucks. I hate to see Donovan McCulley leave, but it's not a big loss. Because look at all these receivers. Elijah Surratt, 7 receptions, 135 yards. That guy's going to be playing on Sundays. He's a good receiver. Keyshawn Williams is coming around. Miles Cross was like the big slot guy in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, especially that UCLA game. Obviously has that connection with Rourke. Both of them were from Ohio University, transferring over to Indiana. But Keyshawn Williams, the Wake Forest transfer, he's coming around. 4 receptions, 87 yards, and a touchdown. So he's playing well. Omar Cooper didn't even have a big game, but still contributed with 47 receiving yards. E.J. Williams, the transfer from Clemson, finally caught a pass this season. And then you got Cross and Price and the tight end Zach Horton. Only 1 reception for Horton. But he's a really good tight end. He impacts the game in a lot of other ways besides just catching balls. He's really good at blocking, and Signetti and a lot of other coaches have actually pointed that out, that like Horton is probably one of the most underrated players in the Big Ten because he's not catching a lot of passes statistically at the tight end spot, so he's not getting a lot of coverage. But he's a good player. Definitely blocking very well for Indiana, and just such a balanced attack, though. Ellison, 1 touchdown run. Lawton, 1 touchdown run. Keyshawn Williams, a touchdown catch. Horton, a touchdown catch. Miles Cross, a touchdown catch. Just so balanced from Indiana. You'll love to see it. And the defense, they struggled at times. They did struggle at times. I mean, giving up 24 to Northwestern, that's a little bit concerning, especially because the over-under for this game was 41. Indiana got that themselves with 41 points, but I don't think anybody was expecting Northwestern to score 24. I had my official score prediction for this game at 28-14. So I underestimated Northwestern's offense going up against Indiana's defense, but I also underestimated Indiana's offense going up against Northwestern's defense. I really thought Northwestern's defense was going to be able to slow down Indiana's offense. They did not. Indiana recorded over 500 yards of offense in this game. And actually, it's the first time in program history, so we're talking about more records being broken for Indiana. The first time in program history that Indiana has had 4 games in a row of 500-plus yards of offense. That's insane. And I know most of the teams they played haven't been that good, but still, 3 Big Ten teams in there. UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern. If this was Tom Allen, this wouldn't be happening. So that's very impressive as well for Indiana football. Just showcasing how different of a team this is in every regard. I mean, they're even getting coverage on game day. Pat McAfee. It's so insane seeing him talking about Indiana football on game day. And there's other media people. Like, that doesn't matter, though. Like, Cignetti's like saying to his team and his guys, you know what? We're getting all this coverage now. At the beginning of the season, nobody believed in Indiana football. Literally, they were ranked in the S&P rankings as the 81st team in college football. Right now, the S&P rankings rank them as a top 25 team, which they should. Everybody has them in the top 25 now, and I still think a lot of people are lagging a bit on Indiana. I feel like they're probably better than 23rd. They're going to move up a little bit in the rankings, but the fact is the rankings don't matter. The rankings do not matter when it comes to talking about Indiana football, because all it's about is their play on the field and what Curt Cignetti is doing with this program. A program that just doesn't win. A program that just does not have success. And Curt Cignetti is making it happen at one of the most unlikeliest programs of all time. And we'll see when the rubber meets the road toward the end of the year. I'm just soaking all this in. I'm thrilled for all these Indiana fans out there that have seen decades and decades of losing. And I know that they had the 2019 and 2020 seasons. But I'm telling you, even if I was hyping up IU back in those years, it just felt like Indiana, it was going to crack. It just doesn't feel like this is going to crack with Cignetti. Yeah, they're going to lose games. Every team loses games. But it just feels like as long as Cignetti's the coach of Indiana football, they're going to win. Because the guy wins. He as he said, Google me, I win. He wins. Wherever he is, he wins. And I believe in what he's doing. I really do. I don't say that about most coaches, because a lot of times what people say, a lot of it can be hoopla. A lot of it's not the truth. But Indiana's legit. Like, they're legitimately a good team. I'm not going to say a great team, but from where Indiana's been in the past, this is just so fun to watch. And like I said, game wasn't perfect. Northwestern, very shocked they had the amount of production they had. I mean, Jack Loesch, their quarterback, he threw for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's a great game for him, because he's been coming in barely having like 50 yards in a game or 100 yards. Like, Northwestern's passing offense has been terrible. And actually, Jack Loesch, he's been coming in for Mike Wright, the Vanderbilt quarterback and Mississippi State quarterback that transferred to Northwestern. He's gotten benched because he's just not a great passer. But Jack Loesch, I mean, he did all right. He ran some too. But Indiana did a pretty good job not allowing Northwestern to run that much. Cam Porter is the best back for Northwestern. He is having some injury issues right now, but he only had 15 rushing yards in this game. That's big. But Indiana, the passing defense is the only weakness, in my opinion. And the only issue is for Indiana in that regard is that their best cover corner, D'Angelo Pons, is like 5'9". He's a good player, and he's probably going to be playing on Sundays somehow, but he is undersized vastly. So that does hurt when you're trying to stop, the other team's passing offense, because most receivers are 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", and you got a little 5'9" cover corner as your best guy, and the other guy's like 6 foot. That's a little bit of a weakness for Indiana, but they do bend at times. Like, there was a couple plays where Northwestern had like 50-yard gains, and there was one big touchdown pass. But other than that, they did clamp down in the fourth. Because if you do look at the box score, like Indiana, they were up 24-17 at the end of the third. They were up 17-10 at the end of the half. And I will say, that was another key. When you talk about keys to why Indiana won this game, outside of all the things I've already said with how well their offense played and their defense clamped down in the fourth, Indiana was up 14-10 almost at the end of the first half. But then they went down the field in a minute and kicked a field goal to go up 7 at the half. That's big. Like, you think Tom Allen would have done that? You think Tom Allen would have done that with Indiana? What would Tom Allen have done? Tom Allen would have just kneeled the football. He'd just been like, "Now we'll take it half. We're up 14-10. It's all good. This is a success. We didn't expect to be ahead." So that's big as well, right? That Indiana up 4 before the half was like, "We're gonna go down the field and we're gonna get points." They didn't score a touchdown, but they got a field goal out of it. So 17-10. And I think it's big, too, that Indiana kicked a couple field goals in this game, made the field goal. So that's going to be good for Indiana, hopefully, in a game that they need field goals. That Radicic, he's a solid kicker since they lost, Charles Campbell. But still, I feel like Radicic is really solid. I do worry still with Indiana's, kickoff game because they have 2 guys injured in that department. But the third-string guy's doing all right as well. But that was key for me. Indiana making a statement that they were able to score before the half, but they were up 24-17 into the third. And then things got a little dicey in the fourth, but then Indiana blew it open. Same thing with Maryland. Like, they were all tied at 21, but then Indiana just blew away from them. They keep finding ways to keep grinding out these games, and then they just pull away at the end. And that's key for Indiana football. That's why they won this game. This game basically went very similarly to the Maryland game. Very similarly. It was basically the exact same thing. Teams were going tit for tat, and then Indiana pulled away. Stephen Cherry says Indiana could be undefeated rolling into Columbus. If that's the case, Stephen, man, I mean, even if Indiana's somehow undefeated going into that game, which, again, my mind's not there yet. I'm like just soaking up all these wins right now. I just way in the future. But if Indiana somehow is undefeated going into that game is going to have a lot of hype. Trust me. So much hype. They're going to be hyping that game up to the hilt. But that would be crazy. We'll see, though. But even if Indiana has a couple losses going in that game, I'm just so happy to see how far Indiana has come in one season with Cignetti. Will says, I'm so happy my team did not play this week. Absolutely. I wish Alabama didn't play this week. That was sad. That was very sad. I did not like seeing that at all. I mean, Indiana football getting the win was great. That was awesome to see. Definitely enjoyed that. But Alabama losing, yeah, that hurt. Scott Davis, appreciate you for stopping by. So don't forget the Northwestern had 2 weeks to prepare offensively for today's game. True. Absolutely true, Scott. And to be honest, you probably remember this too since you pointed that out. So did UCLA. UCLA had 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana. Didn't matter. So that's huge because a lot of times people say that really matters. That, oh, well, we got 2 weeks to scout an opponent, get rest. Our team has some, maybe some injuries. Like guys can get healed. Just take a breather, take a break. Like we've had a rough start, but we're gonna turn things around this week. And that's normally the week when a lot of teams that are reeling come out and play hard. Like, and really Northwestern did. I mean, this was probably, and I don't know if there's any Northwestern fans watching this, they're not going to like this, but in my opinion, this is probably the best game Northwestern's played this season. Probably. I know some fans would probably say the Duke game, but Northwestern should have beaten Duke. Duke is not as good as Indiana. They're not. And Northwestern should have beaten them, but they just did not capitalize on the million mistakes Duke made in the game. But I really feel this was the best game Northwestern played. Maybe I'm overselling Indiana. I could be. But I do feel like Northwestern, those 2 weeks to prepare did help them. They got better on offense. Their defense, you could say, regressed, but that could just be because Indiana's offense is insanely good. But again, I don't know. Indiana, this is just unprecedented territory for the Hoosiers. I mean, they're breaking records every week. I've never seen a team in my life, every single week that they play, they break records. Every single time. I mean, it's insane. I mean, you don't see that. Like Indiana against Western Illinois, most points scored against an opponent, most yards in a game. This game, first time beat Northwestern since 93. First team to be bowl eligible. First time going 6-0 since 67. Last week, 5-0 since 67. It hadn't beat Maryland in 3 years. And then you talk about the UCLA game, first ever one in the Rose Bowl. Like I said, breaking records every week. And that is a testament kind of to how bad Indiana football is historically, that they are breaking all these records. But it's still, you got to break them sometime. If it wasn't for Cignetti, Indiana would have just kept on losing with Tom Allen. As much as I really liked Tom Allen and respected the guy that he was when he was the coach of IU, it wasn't going to work. I mean, even me, I was one of his biggest supporters, even when Indiana was really struggling. And I was like, Tom Allen, he had a good run, but those coordinators. And I will say, Cignetti's got great coordinators, too. The guys from James Madison that came on over to Indiana, they know what they're doing. They're good coordinators. So, Indiana probably needs to find a way to keep those guys around as long as possible, just like Cignetti. Like a lot of people are saying, Indiana needs to make sure that Cignetti don't leave. Well, you got to keep those coordinators around for a while. They're good. Like, they're legitimately good coordinators, and they have a lot of chemistry. So, but again, that's all in the future. I don't even want to talk about all that. Like, I don't even want to have the thought of Cignetti leaving. Like, just embracing the moment right now for Indiana football. And heck, even if he does leave, maybe Indiana, hopefully, if he does leave in a couple years, maybe Indiana will be built up to the point that somebody else will be like, hey, I want that job, another good, solid coach. But like I said, that's in the future. The present is right now, and Indiana is 6-0. They're ranked. They're 6-0. They're bowl eligible. And a lot of people think they might have a shot to make the playoff. which again's in the future. But these are things that are absolutely unprecedented. It is insane. I mean, right here, you got all these articles saying first team to become bowl eligible this season. It's just insane. And the thing that I love about Cignetti is even though Curt Cignetti, he's the guy that, you know, I wouldn't say he's brash, but he doesn't let things like really influence how he feels. He doesn't let, you know, things sway him or whatever, or just blindly just give praise. But look at that. Cignetti said he's not supposed to say he's proud of IU football, but at 6-0, he let it slip. He basically said after the game, I'm not supposed to say it. I'm disciplined. I'm not letting this get to our team. I'm not going to let it bleed over to our team. Like, well, we're 6-0. We've made it now. No, he wants more. He wants Indiana to make the playoff. He wants them to make the Big Ten title game. That's what he said when he got hired. I know Tom Allen said it too, but when Cignetti says it, you just believe it because he's backing it up with the results. But even he said he's proud of Indiana football. I mean, I know in Cignetti's mind that he believed that he was going to win in Indiana, but there had to have been a twinge of doubt, right? I mean, Indiana, the losingest program in Power 4 history, used to be Power 5, which I guess the Pac-12 trying not to be dead, so you're still going to have the Power 5, but it really isn't. But Indiana, regardless, the losing Power Conference team of all time historically, had to be a twinge of doubt taking this job. But he believed. He believed like, well, you know what? I did it at all those other schools like James Madison and Elon and Indiana University, Pennsylvania, all those teams that didn't win, all those teams that didn't have success. And he turned them around. And he was like, you know what? I can do the same thing in Indiana. And he's doing it. By golly, he's doing it. And it's a lot of fun to see. And we got another upset. Stephen Cherry saying down goes Tennessee. Tennessee goes down. This is insane. What a weekend of college football. All of these upsets. All these upsets. I still can't believe Alabama lost. Honestly, I cannot believe Alabama lost. They let the rat poison get to them. Nick Saban, how often did Nick Saban talk about the rat poison? Can't let the rat poison get to you. You can't let it happen. You got a big win over Georgia. But Vanderbilt's still a football team. They got players. They got a coach. And they had the belief once they got ahead that we can beat Bama. It doesn't matter. You can have the excuse. Even me as a Bama fan, you can have the excuse that, oh, well, we were coming off the big win. We didn't play that hard. Well, that's your problem, Alabama. That's your own problem. The players, the coaches just didn't get it done. I think DeBoer's a great coach. I honestly do. I mean, he was at Indiana as the offensive coordinator. I really do. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think Kane Wommack's good, the defensive coordinator, who was also at Indiana. But they let the rat poison get to him. The message did not get across to not overlook Vanderbilt because they overlooked Vanderbilt. Like, I don't even care what you want to say. Like, yeah, Vanderbilt played a heck of a game. But if Indiana, or if Alabama, rather, if they had to play as well as they did against Georgia, especially in that first half, they destroy Vanderbilt. Doesn't matter how good Vanderbilt played. But Indiana didn't let the rat poison get to him because Curt Cignetti, a former assistant coach for Nick Saban, he obviously listened to his words. And I know that sometimes, and that's why I'm trying to give Kalen DeBoer the benefit of the doubt at Alabama with that you as a coach can do your job and tell your team not to overlook anybody, but they still do. Sometimes it's just the way that it goes. But Nick Saban never allowed that stuff to happen. He always had his team ready for the next opponent. But we live in the social media era. And I think a lot of players get distracted. I do. I really do. I think they get distracted by accolades and people talking about them. It is what it is because, yeah, there's always been a lot of upsets, but, man, there's a lot of upsets. And the thing that's so funny about it is I remember when I was younger and a top 25 team would lose, it felt like a big deal. You know what I'm saying? It felt like a big deal. Michigan, the number 10 ranked team in college football, plays at Washington, and Washington is favored. It wasn't even an upset, folks. Washington beating Michigan was not even an upset. So, like, literally, that's what I'm saying. Like, all these are upsets. They're a big deal. All these games. Tennessee going down. Michigan going down. USC going down. Bama going down. They're all upsets. But at the end of the day, I'm not that shocked. Now, the Bama one shocks me the most, but still, it's like coming off the Georgia game. Georgia almost lost to Kentucky. They should have lost to Kentucky. They didn't, but really, any team can beat any team if you play bad. If you're a number one ranked team and you can lose, you just have to be focused. You just can't let all that stuff get to you. But a lot of these players and teams are obviously letting it happen. But I'm definitely glad Indiana didn't let it happen. Sonny Verma says, crazy day of football today. Nice seeing you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that, Sonny. Glad you stopped by. But absolutely, it was a good performance for Indiana and a monumental win. Yeah, Northwestern's not a great football team, but this was a monumental win for Indiana football. They covered. They're now 6-0. They're bowl eligible. And Kurt Cignetti didn't let that rat poison get to him. Didn't do it. So, Steven says NIL brought more parity, although elite still have a financial advantage. Absolutely. Definitely. The elite programs like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, they have that advantage. They do have that advantage. But you do have a lot of good players transferring down as well. A lot of good players transfer to smaller schools if they're not getting playing time or whatever. Or if they're not getting enough NIL, and then this other school's like, well, hey, we're gonna give you more, right? We're gonna give you more money that this other team can't give you because they're paying all these other guys. I mean, it's a domino effect, right? But yeah, I agree. There is more parity now. I felt like about 5-6 years ago when I was younger and I was watching college football, I wouldn't say college football got boring, but it just felt like for a time that you just knew every single time somebody was gonna win. You know what I'm saying? Like every single time. Like a ranked team like Alabama would play at like Mississippi State. It just felt like, it's not even going to be close. There's more upsets. You got to love the parity. But at the same time, it does create a lot of dysfunction, though, because of the fact that, you got a bunch of all these players going all over the place in college football. And you got this realignment, too, which is insane. The realignment's crazy. But you got all these players going to all these different schools. And then they retransfer again, right? Like they retransfer. Like guys are going 3 and 4 different places. You have a guy that transfers down because of the fact that he was at a bigger school, didn't play, but then he goes to a smaller school, does well, and he transfers back up to a bigger school. So it's insane. It's crazy. College football is just kind of off the rails at this point. Realignment, all this stuff's wild. But we still love college football. We're still here. But if dysfunction and parity means Indiana football, it's 6-0 and they're winning football games and they have a great coach in Kurt Cignetti. You can argue maybe the best coach they've had in history. I know Bo McMillan was good and Bill Mallory was solid, but Cignetti, man, hopefully Indiana, hopefully they use all that NIL that they got and hopefully they use all the money that they're getting in that big media rights deal and they can keep this thing rolling. Make sure that they don't lose Cignetti. Like I said, that's in the future, but, you got to keep this going. This is awesome for Indiana. I mean, like Aaron Taylor, I appreciate your stop by. Indiana's going bowling. Absolutely, Aaron. And it's a great thing to see. But definitely, if you guys enjoyed this live stream, here again, you guys are here already, but this is the channel link. Subscribe to the channel. This is the place you want to be for Indiana football content. We got more content coming on the way. Every Tuesdays at 7 o'clock Eastern time, Indiana Hoosiers Live. We're going to be talking about a host of topics, recapping a little bit more of this game, previewing their next opponent when that comes down the road. Obviously, this Tuesday, it's a bye week, so we're not going to be previewing anybody. We're just going to be basking in the 6-0, no previewing. But we're going to be having a lot of topics to talk about for Indiana football. It's going to be a lot of fun. Every Tuesdays at 7 Eastern. So if you enjoy this, you're definitely going to enjoy that. And then post-game shows. I know that a lot of people would prefer it right after the game. Definitely try to make that happen in the future, but today just couldn't make it happen. But we went live right now, and I do appreciate all you guys, Will, Jackson, Steve, Scott, and Aaron, all of you for stopping by. Really appreciate it. Definitely, Steven saying hit the like button. That helps out the channel 110%. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Indiana football, they're on the rise, and hopefully it continues with Kurt Cignetti. You want to be along for the ride, hit that subscribe button. We got a whole host of content coming down the pike. It's going to be a lot of fun, hopefully continuing to talk about the Hoosiers this season. A lot of success so far, but hopefully that continues. Subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 50 subs. We're getting really close to 50 subs, and I appreciate all you guys who have subscribed so far. But definitely, you're going to enjoy all the content coming down the pike. It's going to be a blast. Absolutely. But before I go, definitely we have a advertisement really quick that we got to get to, and then we'll be doing a little bit more recap, and then that'll be it.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
Definitely. Mark Rogers and Steve Merrill, they know what they're doing when it comes to the betting game. Not going to get every game right. It's absolutely impossible. It can't be Biff. When you got all the games from the future and Back to the Future, where you're going to know all the scores, you're going to get every game right, and you're going to be a multi-millionaire because you knew all the scores beforehand. That ain't going to happen. But Mark Rogers and Steve Merrill, they know what they're doing. They do a really good job, and they get games right more often than not. That definitely would help you out a lot if you guys go check that out. But definitely, I do appreciate all you guys for being here. We will be back for more Indiana Hoosiers content in the future. But this is big for Indiana. 6-0. For the Hoosiers. Such a big game knocking off Northwestern. What a fun day at college football, though. And it made it even more fun the fact that Indiana won. Some sad results. Alabama losing was tough. Carolina losing. But Indiana football, they're 6-0. And Kurt Cignetti, he's not done yet. He's proud of this team, but it's not good enough. They're not going to stop here. They're going to keep on proving everybody wrong from the preseason that the Indiana Hoosiers are here, and they're here to stay. And hopefully they continue to have a lot more success the rest of the season. But definitely appreciate everybody for being here. Like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel, Indiana, the Voice of College Football, if you enjoyed the show. Share the stream out on social media to let other Indiana Hoosiers fans know that we are here talking Indiana football every single week. And thanks for being here, everybody. Indiana 6-0. They're having a great start to the season, and hopefully it continues. Go Hoosiers, everybody.